For more than 2 decades, the digital economy has been built on journalism. But journalism hasn't been paid for it. Platforms have captured the audience, they've captured the advertising, and now with generative AI, they're capturing the content itself, often without permission and certainly without compensation. Well, but what if that model is starting to crack? Around the world, governments are beginning to push back, forcing platforms to negotiate to pay or to face penalties. And at the center of this movement is a simple but explosive idea that journalism has real economic value and those who depend on it should pay for it. Hi, I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. This, as always, is E&P Reports, our weekly vodcast series that explores the people, organizations, and issues shaping the evolving news publishing industry. Joining me today is Rod Sims, one of the most influential voices globally on the relationship between big tech and journalism. Rod, I am going to use AI now to describe you to my audience, because I didn't know you that well. So I actually had the unmitigated goal to go to ChatGPT and said, who the heck is Rod? And I'm going to read you 2 paragraphs. If it gets you wrong, you will tell me now. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right, here we go, Rod. Rod served for more than a decade as the chair of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, Australia's competition regulator, where he became known, in the words of the Australian Financial Review, quote, the most feared man in Australian business. Is that correct, sir?
All that is correct, yes.
Okay,
that is what
so
was
far,
said.
so
Whether the statement was true, but it was said by the Financial Review, correct?
I'm quoting them. Okay.
That's what the Financial Review said. Yep.
During your tenure, you led some of the world's most serious regulatory challenges to companies like Google and Facebook, and was instrumental in developing what we're going to discuss today, the News Bargaining Code, a policy that has driven hundreds of millions of dollars back to news publishers. And what brought your attention to me, obviously we've been reporting on what's been happening in Australia, was an amazing op-ed you wrote for the National Post recently called News Media Bargaining Codes Should Be Strengthened, Not Gutted. How did I do? Did ChatGPT get you? Did I miss anything else? Favorite color?
No. Compliments to ChatGPT. I can't fault them.
No
hallucination there.
Well, before we take a quick break, I want to set up the core question for this conversation. Here you have platforms that clearly rely on journalism to engage users, and now AI systems that depend on it to generate answers. So the question becomes, if journalism is so essential, why is it so undervalued? Everybody stick around. We'll dig into that and more with Rod right after this.
Hello, my name is Walter Hussman. Our family has been in the news business for over 100 years. Journalism includes 2 parts: reporting the news and providing opinions. But in recent years, there's been too much opinion appearing in news reporting. This has eroded public trust in news reporting to the lowest level of any U.S. institution. To address this, we started a nonprofit, the Center for Integrity in News Reporting.
The Center for Integrity in News Reporting, CFINR, is on a mission to rebuild public trust in journalism, one newsroom and one classroom at a time. We champion the effort to have news organizations and journalism schools create and prominently display their own clear, concise statements of core journalistic values. Learn more by visiting the Center for Integrity and News Reporting site at cfinr.org.
All right, Rod, let's start at 50,000 feet. You've argued that platforms need journalism to function. What is the fundamental misunderstanding about the value of news in the digital economy, in your opinion?
News has always depended on people reading it and seeing ads. The ads paid for the journalism, as well as a charge to buy the newspaper. That's certainly the traditional model in Australia. What's happened is you've had platforms that have, to use the technical term, disintermediated the media companies from those who read the newspapers, and they have captured the eyes of people who want to read the papers, and they are the ones monetizing that, not the media. So the media has just, because the platforms have put a platform there, and this applies to media, but other creative sectors as well. But it really matters for media because of the impact of media on our democracy. But media has been disconnected from its audience, and the platforms have unilaterally inserted themselves and taken the economic value.
All right, so let's now take it down to the tarmac. Let's talk about what actually happened in Australia. Roughly 250 million in a year started flowing to the publishers. What did that prove? There's a perception that these deals mainly benefited. Now, just large media companies, but you've said smaller publishers often did just as well. I want you to explain that. And from your perspective, how does the bargaining code work? And did it work as intended? Or did it reveal flaws in how these policies were designed?
It worked initially completely as intended. We had the advantage in Australia that we already had a concept called access regimes, where, for example, dairy farmers could collectively bargain with the local dairy, and that was an enforceable right. So you not only had that collective right to enforce things through the government, but you also had collective bargaining. That gave us a policy platform from which to move. We also decided that if one newspaper gets compensated, they all must get compensated. That is, if you show news, you've got to be compensating all the players who provide news. Sometimes a bit of definitional issue there, but that was the point. And it worked very well because we had all media on side who wanted this to happen. We had all the politicians on side. And I guess I have the advantage of being at the ACCC, and so I could be a bit of a focal point, keeping the issue out there. So it got through the Parliament with all political parties strongly supporting it. What happened, and as you say, $250 million a year flowing to all media companies. We've got, depends how you define it, probably 4 big media companies in Australia. Yes, they all got deals, but so did Country Press Australia and a range of other small players. And on some calculations, those small players per journalist got more money than the big players. So it's just a falsehood spread by the platforms. Seriously, that the small players missed out. That they did not. It's absolutely false. So the flaw eventually, Mike, was that Facebook then said, well, we'll take journalism off our platform,
Yes.
which we had never thought they would do. Google, of course, can't do that. You really can't run a search engine without news. It just sort of doesn't happen. Facebook argued that they could take news off without any effect. And so they withdrew from the system. We didn't, I mean, the system was not designed to be, you must carry news and then pay for it. It was just, if you carry news, you pay for it. Now, the government's response, just to complete the long monologue there, is that they're now coming up with, instead of the News Media Bargaining Code, a thing called the News Bargaining Initiative, which says you are going to pay whether you carry news or not. So that's the change. They're not insisting you carry news. They're just saying you're going to pay whether you carry news or not. So they've dealt with what could be seen as a flaw in the original regime.
Let's discuss the issue we tend to have here in the States with a free, unfettered press. We cannot define news in the United States. The government can't say you're news, you're not. Did you have any of that problem where even bloggers said, wait a second, I'm getting used, my content's being shared? Did you have problems with everybody raising their head saying, I'm a journalist, that we can have here in the US where we don't define it either as a business or have a license for someone to be a journalist?
Yeah, look, that's right, Mike. We had it a bit, but not a lot, because it was all around being a news media business. That's what you were. You're in the business of news media. So if you're a blogger, you aren't in that business. You may claim you're in that business. You may claim you're getting a bit of money out of it. But no, we had clearly in mind all the traditional media businesses. So as I say, we've got four big ones. We've got, I don't know, 6 to 8 intermediate size. And then, of course, we've got hundreds of small ones. But the only issue, I mean, no issue with the four, no issue with the 6 intermediate size ones. But the smaller ones, yes, there were some issues where people said, look, I'm providing news. If you were really just, a sports magazine, it didn't fit the definition. And we had a government authority deciding whether or not you fitted the definition. But it was an argument at the margin, Mike. We ruled out the bloggers and individuals from word go. No, you're an organisation that supplied news. And you had to have some background in doing so.
All right, let's forward to today. AI is now ingesting massive amounts of journalism to generate answers, often without compensation. How similar is this to what we saw with search and social when you started this initiative back then?
In one way, Mike, it's identical, but it's worse. It's identical because AI, just like the platforms, Google, Facebook, others, invented a platform which inserted themselves between media and their readers. AI is another version of that, much bigger version of that, where it will just, instead of, as Google and Facebook did, here's a bit of, you've asked about, the user may have asked about the war in Ukraine, take an obvious example. Most of the response you're going to get on that is news, comes from newspapers or digital news. But you used to get, well, here's the story and here's the link. With AI, you won't get the link. Well, Google's still showing some links with Gemini, but really AI is meant to tell you the answer. And where it comes from, hard to know.
Now, here's the thing. There are some publishers now doing individual AI deals. You believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's better to work collectively, correct? Don't become a maverick. Don't cut a deal with with OpenAI. Be part of the club. Thus, the big and the small will be compensated together. Is that your position as you argue this?
100%, yes.
There's always a tension between government support and editorial independence. How do you respond to concerns that these policies could create unintended influence, where the publisher will be influenced in one direction or another? Or do you still feel that journalism will be fair and unbiased during this compensation model?
I think I look at it slightly differently, Mike. I'm a fierce believer in the capitalist system. I'm a fierce believer in competition and letting the market run things. But where you have what are called externalities in economics, where you have market failure in economics, then there is a clear role for government. Markets only work if governments address the market failures. Now, here the market failure is clear because you've got these very large organisations inserting themselves, which is sort of breaking up the market. They're using their monopoly power to get away with all this. And so the government has a role to intervene. Now, the way that the government intervened in the News Media Bargaining Code was exactly the right model. It imposed obligations on Google and Facebook to bargain, and they did. So companies struck individual bargains. I remember getting a lot of criticism that the deals were opaque. Well, they were never meant to be public. It's a private deal between companies. What we required is that you had to do deals, and if you did a deal with one, you had to do a deal with everybody. That was what the government did. So it wasn't inserting itself as someone who had control over news. It was dealing with the market failure. And I think that's what has to happen again. Arguably, with the News Media Bargaining Code, the government could just go back and say, this is a must-carry regime. You must carry news and you must pay for it. So there's various ways to deal with it. But ultimately, the best model is one where the companies bargain. And the only way they'll do that, the only way the platforms will do that fairly, some of the deals under AI, I've got a pretty good sense, don't adequately compensate. What we had with the News Media Bargaining Code was two things. You bargain with one, you've got to bargain with everybody. And if you can't reach a deal, it goes to arbitration. Because Google and Facebook did not want to go to arbitration, they just went out and did the deals. So doing private deals is by far the best way. The government's just playing its role of dealing with the market failure.
Are you optimistic? I mean, I don't know. We have a challenge here in the U.S. now, and I hope that you keep your eye on us as well. You may have heard of the term news deserts that was coined by Medill University, and there are reports that now show there are communities that have no journalistic voice anymore. And then we have proof that then the economy wanes, people stop voting, obviously corruption rises because there's no check on power. Are you optimistic globally that eventually, just like a composer of a song, at least here in the United States, is compensated for decades every time that song is used in a public way, that finally the person who creates journalism will be compensated just like that composer, and it will happen? Are you optimistic?
I'm an optimist by nature, Mike. I don't really know where this is going to go, but I know we have to keep pushing hard. And I know that if the news outlets come together, they will be very powerful. So that's the issue in the United States. Will they come together? Now, I realize you've got laws against collective bargaining. We have the laughable situation here where Facebook called our collective bargaining rules facilitating cartels, which is just, stupid. As if the dairy farmers getting together with the only dairy down the road. I mean, of course, they are forming a cartel in a sense, but that's how that's helping the market operate, not stopping the market operate. So all the reasons you just mentioned when you talked about news deserts, those are the reasons we have to support journalism. Not only do we have the monopoly power market failure argument, but we've got that argument that democracy depends on journalism. If we don't have journalism, we are missing one of the 3 or 4 crucial ingredients of protecting our democracy. So in a sense, if you like, there's 2 reasons, you can collapse them into one, why government has a role to make sure we get news media businesses paid for. So the key thing for me, Mike, is that the media businesses come together. If they want to solve this, come together. And just going back to the Australian experience where, big and small benefited, they came together. They spoke as one. They all said, we want this law. We want everybody to benefit. And that the fact that they had everybody in the tent meant they got all the politicians on side. It's just tremendously powerful when media comes together. So if they do that, they'll win.
I'm sorry, but I now know why the Financial Review called you the most feared man in Australian business. And thank God you're doing this, because I'm very optimistic as well. I believe that at least over here, this experiment of ours requires a free and unfettered press. And this is one of the ways that I see in the future that the sustainability of that will happen, that fair competition for, I guess, the news that is monetized that we create. There's no other way to say it. Rod Sims, right. Former chair of the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission and key architect behind the News Media Bargaining Code, which the world is now looking at as a possible solution globally for the continuation of local journalism. I want to thank you for your time. Keep up the fight, and more importantly, keep in touch with us and let us know what's going on over there.
Thanks, Mark. I enjoyed it and always took the Financial Review's comment as a compliment.